Ciao everyone, this is Nate on the Stone. Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to talk about Jussie Smollett discarding the rule of law and why that's not going to be good news for any of us. If I had name dropped Jussie Smollett to any of you guys a year ago, your reaction probably would have been, "Who dat?" Yeah, he was on the show Empire, a show that I personally never watched, just full disclosure, but that's not really a very good barometer for fame or stardom. Well, what a difference a year makes, because now, of course, Jussie Smollett is a household name, and all because at the end of January, he claimed that at a little before 2 a.m. during a polar vortex in Chicago, while he was leaving a subway, two men wearing masks and MAGA hats threw racial and homophobic slurs against him before beating him, putting a noose around his neck, pouring bleach on him, all the while telling him that this, Chicago, was MAGA country. People, though, immediately started poking holes into his story. For example, why were these two guys out at 2 a.m. during a polar vortex in Chicago? And how do they recognize Smollett? Did they have the rope and the bleach on them before they had even spotted him? And if so, what were they doing with it? Why was it that none of the surveillance cameras in the neighborhood captured any of the alleged attack? Why did Smollett go to social media to report on the attack before going to the police? Why did Smollett not cooperate with the police when they asked him for his cell phone during their initial investigation? And how could anyone confuse Chicago, which Hillary Clinton won in 2016 by 65%, as MAGA country? It soon became pretty clear that Smollett, rather than being the victim of a hate crime, actually staged the crime against himself, a suspicion that was cinched when the police found that his two attackers were not white Trump-voting skinheads, but actually two Nigerian brothers, Abimda and Olabinjo Usundero, both of whom Smollett knew. One co-starred with him on Empire, and the other one was his gym coach. The CPD even traced back a check that Smollett had written to the brothers, showing that he had basically paid them off to stage the attack on him. 16 felony charges were brought against Smollett. People argued correctly that he had to be made an example of for faking this hate crime, because now future victims of actual hate crimes were going to find it harder for the public to believe them. And then, out of the blue, on March 26th, the state prosecutors dropped all charges against Smollett. Furthermore, the judge actually cleansed his police record of all wrongdoing, as if nothing had ever happened, and then sealed his records. This despite State Attorney Kim Foxx earlier claiming that the state had enough evidence to convict Smollett when they went to trial. Even Mayor Rahm Emanuel was outraged, saying that justice had been whitewashed. People began saying that the reason why Smollett got off was because he was rich and famous and because he was a liberal. This was brought as another example of Chicago politics.
This is my kind of town, Chicago is.
And just another example of why the system was corrupt. Eddie Scarry over at the Washington Examiner argued that it was because Smollett was privileged because he was black and gay. I think that all of these explanations have an element of truth, but it's not the whole story. Smollett isn't that rich by Hollywood standards, his net worth being only worth about $1 million. He's not that famous. Again, he wasn't a household name until this whole mishiva came out. And just being black and or gay isn't enough to justify getting treated like this. Just look at how Clarence Thomas, Thomas Sowell, Blair White, Patty Manning, and Doug Manwaring have been treated. The reason why Smollett was able to get away with faking a hate crime in spite of all the evidence is because he's an ideologue. For example, he hates Donald Trump. In September of 2017 on Sirius XM Progressive Radio, he described Trump as, quote, a pig, a racist, a horrible human being, unquote. And in February of 2018, he posted a picture of himself on Instagram with an F Trump t-shirt. He still believes, despite all evidence to the contrary, that America is a systematically racist and oppressive country, as shown in his unwavering support of Colin Kaepernick, as well as in his assertion after his attack that America would not accept a black gay man like himself. Something that other ideologues claim that his attack proved, even after they admitted that his attack was fake. And those are all things that the postmodern leftist ideology believes. They hate Trump, obviously, but they also believe that certain groups have been oppressed by the West, by the patriarchy, and by white culture. And they can tell which groups have been oppressed by these forces through intersectional identity politics, which basically says that if you're not a white, straight, Western male, then at some point in time you have been oppressed by some of those forces. And, FYI, this is actually why ideologues on the left believe that they have to be put in charge, so that with their enlightened ideas, they can actually bring utopia to the rest of us by redistributing power to these historically oppressed groups. Because Jussie Smollett is a black gay man, putting him in two minority categories, and because he thinks along the same grooves as the postmodern leftist ideology, he can't be wrong. The left doesn't believe that Jussie Smollett faked a hate crime. Instead, they believe that he simply acted out or reenacted on the stage of Chicago what they honestly believe happens in America every single day. Instead of being a criminal, he's a hero. And heroes aren't punished. They're rewarded. What this means is that the rule of law has been replaced by the rule of ideology, and that's not good for anyone. Whether you're man, woman, black, white, straight, gay, it doesn't matter. And it's bad news for all of us because it destroys justice and it destroys equality. The rule of law is something that the Anglo-New World, America and Canada, inherited from England, which declared, contrary to other European countries developing during the Middle Ages, that it was the law and not the king and or the nobles which was supreme. According to the medieval English jurist Henry de Bracton in his book On the Laws and Customs of England, the law made the king, and where there was no law but instead just will, which he defined as arbitrary brute force, there could be no king. And this very English idea was reinforced throughout British history. When King John of the Robin Hood story started acting more like an arbitrary tyrant instead of an actual king. In 1258, the provisions of Oxford were written, which created the Privy Council and the Parliament, which acted as checks on the king. And in 1689, the British Bill of Rights was written, which listed inalienable rights that Englishmen had by virtue of their being Englishmen. And this idea was carried over to the New World, so that in 1774, John Adams was able to argue against British tyranny by defending the idea of the rule of law instead of the arbitrary reign of men. Okay, that's a nice little history lesson, Nate, you might be thinking, but what does that have to do with Smollett and ideology, and how does that go into destroying justice and equality? Well, quite a lot, as it turns out, unfortunately. A law is supposed to be a product of reason. Legislators are supposed to take human nature, the common good, plus a country's history and culture, and from these sources form a good law, a law that doesn't insult or offend those sources. So we might say that the rule of law is just another way of saying the rule of reason. And reason tells us that since we don't have a magic mirror with which we can look into people's hearts, and since peering into what people actually truly think would require invasive tyranny worthy of 1984, the only thing that we can really judge people by, according to the law, is their actions, things that we can see and judge. And because the law is no respecter of persons, to quote our medieval friend Bracton again, it means that it doesn't take into account your annual income, your skin color, how you voted last November, your job title, or your family connections. We could actually say,
it's not who I am underneath, but what I do.
That decides whether the law will reward you or punish you. And that's why whenever we see pictures of Lady Justice, she's always blindfolded because she doesn't look upon anyone with any favor or disfavor. And this is why the law also creates equality, because if you think about it, human beings are only equal before God, if you believe in him, and before the law, because in our natural state, people are very unequal. John Adams mentioned this when he talked about what he called the natural aristocracy, the fact that some people are stronger than others, some people are smarter than others, some people are more talented or virtuous than others, some people are richer than others. But before the law, all of these inequalities are erased. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Doesn't matter if you're black or white. Doesn't matter if you're an Olympic gold medalist or the janitor at the YMCA, the president or a single mother in New York. The law applies to everyone the same way because the law only looks upon your actions. But the rule of men, or ideology we could call it, which is code for arbitrariness, where prejudices and biases decide what's right and wrong, destroys justice and it destroys equality. It destroys justice because it's no longer your actions that decide whether the law punishes you or not. It's what you think. Thinking the right way will mean that you're not going to be punished. And it destroys equality now because instead of erasing all of our natural inequalities, it actually creates more inequalities. Because if you think the right way, you are now, to coin the phrase, more equal than other people. And the inequalities created by the rule of ideology are even worse than the natural inequalities. If someone is stronger than you, you can join a gym. If someone is faster than you, you can start running. If someone is smarter than you, then you can raid the local library, take online classes, watch YouTube videos. If someone is richer than you are, you can take a finance course and reinvest, learn about money. You might not be able to completely bridge the gap between you and other people, but you can at least do something to shorten the space in between you guys. With the rule of ideology, the powers that be declare that justice isn't for you and that you are going to remain a second-class citizen because of the way you think. And with that, you are only left with two options. First, you can accept your fate, or you can change your destiny by converting to the worldview of the ideologues, a worldview that you probably disagree with because you weren't an ideologue to begin with. That's why the rule of law isn't just a good idea. It's not just a good thing. It's actually vital for a good society, and why getting rid of it and replacing it with the rule of ideology is going to hurt everyone in the long run. But what say you? Does the Jussie Smollett case show that the rule of ideology is replacing the rule of law? Or is it just another example of the corruption of the system? As always, let me know your thoughts, your opinions, down in the comment section below. Well, that about wraps up everything for right now, gang. As always, if you liked the video, whether you agreed with me or not, don't forget to show your support by giving the video a like and by sharing it with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and all the other social media platforms. And if you like videos about the culture, politics, and religion, but from a different POV, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and to ring the bell for notifications so that you'll always know when I post new videos like this every Tuesday. Videos you're not going to want to miss. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for giving me a little bit of your day. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed to my channel. And I will see you all again here next week, gang, on top of the stone. Ciao.